moving on to the very substantial part of this law, what constitutes as a sexual harassment and what is a workplace? These some important things are mentioned in the definitions part. So if you can throw some light on the important definitions and what do we mean by sexual harassment and what do we mean by workplace?
So, Akshay, there are three important conversations. There are three important definitions under the law that one has to remember, because this particular law goes beyond every other conventional labor laws in terms of those definitions. Okay. So, one is the definition of who can complain and who can they complain against. Second definition, as you said, is of the workplace. And third definition is of sexual harassment. So, first definition, let's take up the first definition quickly. Who can complain and who can they complain against? So the law defines aggrieved woman, and the law defines employee. Okay. And they have, what the law says is that an aggrieved woman who complains to the organization and who has the right to to complain to an organization's IC can be an employee of the company, or it also can be somebody who's not an employee. So basically that means that it could also be a person who's a visitor to the organization, or could be a client, or could be somebody who's interacting with the organization. So this is as broad as possible. And one of the best definitions, one of the best examples of a visitor to a workplace that I can give to the audience is, imagine that, when you're going to see a movie and you've gone to see PVR. In PVR, you are the visitor. And with respect to taking up services of PVR, then and people who are working there, they are the employees. So if you as a visitor get harassed by somebody who's working at PVR, so let's say when you're taking the popcorn, people who are working behind the kitchen counter, people who are working as guards, etc. In case a visitor gets sexually harassed by one of the employees of PVR, at that point of time, you, even though you are a visitor, you can complain to the ICC of PVR for against that employee. So that's how that's the entire reason behind it, has been to make sure that the definition is broad enough to provide an access to complain to every woman who faces sexual harassment vis-a-vis a workplace. Now we have to look at the definition of employees. Even with respect to the employees, the definition has been expanded. So it does not mean only the regular full-time employees of a company. It also refers to trainees. It also refers to people who are working on contractual basis, people who are consultants, people who are working in terms of, third people who are coming from third party agencies. And to the extent that the law even says that it does not matter that you are getting a remuneration or not from the organization. So which means that if, let's say, all the NGOs, etc., where people are volunteering, in that case, even if they're not getting any money from there, but let's say they face harassment, sexual harassment, while they are in their voluntary capacity while working in an organization, even there they can complain to the organization on sexual harassment at workplace. Another aspect that I would just quickly want to throw light about on is the fact that the law also introduces domestic workers as complainants under the law. And the fact that for a domestic worker who comes to your house to clean and cook and do all sorts of things, they are also, for them, your house is the workplace. So domestic workers can also complain for sexual harassment at workplace, but for them the complaint committee is different. For them, the law says that the district officer that I mentioned before, the district officer who's set up at the district level, they need to set up a local complaints committee whose composition is completely different as per law. So in that sense, what it does is that the local complaints committee, which is set up at the district level, domestic workers can also complain there. So that's how broad the definition of employee is. So which means that, and let's come back to an organization. So which means that in an organization, people who are working full time, people who are working on a consultant basis, even the interns who are visiting the organization, let's say they face sexual harassment, and I'm talking about women who are working in these capacities. If they face sexual harassment by another employee of the organization, then they can file a complaint of sexual harassment within that organization and to the ICC of that organization. That's how broad the definition is. Second concept is of workplace, and as we all know, the definition of workplace has gone through so much change in the last 1 year, given the fact that we are not just constrained, or we are not just thinking of workplace from the perspective of the four corners of the office that we are, that we are working in. It's also a hybrid environment and a completely online environment that a lot of us are facing. One has to remember that those are also your workplaces. So, as per law, the definition of workplace says that everywhere that an employee of the organization goes in the course of their work is their workplace. And with that broader definition, we can categorize workplace into three categories. One is your primary workplace, one is your extended workplace, and one is your virtual workplace. So primary workplace is, the term itself clarifies it, right? Primary workplace basically means the office where you go and spend your time. So between 10 to 7 or whatever your office timings are, that office where you're working, obviously that is your workplace. So any incident of sexual harassment that comes there, and you can complain to the IC for sexual harassment at workplace. Now, the second category is your extended workplace. Now, what is extended workplace? Extended is wherever you are going in the course of your work, and you're moving around and you're visiting in the course of your work. That is extended workplace. Examples of extended workplace are the conferences that one is attending, all the events that one is attending. If you're traveling for work, because you're, in terms of going to another city. And the most important thing to see is that why were you there? You were there because your organization had sent you in an official capacity in that work, right? So therefore that becomes your extended workplace. So let's say, for example, a woman has gone to, let's say woman from Delhi has gone to Bombay for an official work, and she's staying in a hotel, okay, and she faces sexual harassment from the employee of the hotel. In that case, even though it becomes third party harassment because it's a third party harassment, but still she has the right to approach her organization and tell them that this is where I got harassed, and the organization's job is to support and make sure that all support is provided to the woman to help to address those, to address any concern and help her in, handling that complaint. So that's how we have to look at these definition of the workplace that is there. And another very critical example of extended workplace, which is very crucial for everyone to understand, are these office retreats and office parties, new year parties, anything that happens within the organization, right? So because these are company funded parties and company approved events, people generally, I have seen, in my experience, I have seen as an external member for organizations, a lot of cases coming from that area. And because people tend to forget, when they're enjoying or when they're drunk, that this is their workplace, and a lot of misbehavior happens in such scenarios. So in that case also, very critical for organizations to explain to employees that, hey, if there is a company event that is happening, that's your workplace, it's not your personal playground. So you have to maintain decorum and you have to maintain your professional standards there as well. So that's how, broad the definition of extended workplace can go. Third example is obviously, your virtual workplaces. And I think virtual workplaces, now we have a lot more idea about what virtual can mean, right? All of us are in some way or the other using some form of official communication online tool in our organization to communicate with our colleagues and communicate with clients and etc., right? So basically phone calls, SMSs, WhatsApp, all the official communication channels that you're using. Let's say you're doing a meeting with your colleague on Zoom, and in that case, that Zoom meeting is the workplace. So a lot of cases in the last 1 year have come up because remote working environment doesn't mean that POSH is not applicable. Sometimes people, I think, forgot this, and people thought that, remote working environment, because I'm working from home, that means POSH is not applicable, but that's not true. POSH is also applicable while we are working at home, because you're doing your official capacity, you're doing your work as an official capacity, right? So in that case, if you are working with your colleague and some untoward cases happens to a woman, or let's say if a man is doing something inappropriate or saying something inappropriate, in that case, that conversation that happened on, let's assume, Zoom, will be considered as sexual harassment at workplace, and a woman has the right to complain. So virtual workplaces is very important in terms of, we see a lot of cases coming up where people have been sending lewd messages or pornographic texts, and things that are happening on WhatsApp in terms of official communication groups that are made up, or even on a one-to-one basis. I have seen a couple of cases that came up last year where senior, or for example, if the manager of a person, manager or level person of an organization was behaving very inappropriately on a Zoom call with a woman, and he used to call her for all the late night Zoom calls, and he used to, like, dress inappropriately or touch himself inappropriately, and the woman had to come and complain. And that's the thing, people forget that there is a line that does not need to be crossed, because, and they forget that that's your workplace. So therefore, very important to understand that workplace is not just limited to your primary workplace right now definitely extends to your remote workplace, as well as extends to extended workplace definition that I just explained. The third definition that is very important is, Akshay, sexual harassment. I think that I'll quickly touch upon this because one is, it's very important for us to understand what is sexual harassment at workplace, right? So we have understood women are covered, we have understood workplace, what our workplace is. One also needs to understand what is sexual harassment. So the law gives 5 broad parameters to define sexual harassment. Interestingly, this is the same definition of sexual harassment that is there in the as definition of sexual harassment under section 350 under section 360 of IPC as well. So it's the same definition of sexual harassment. So the law defines 5 broad parameters, and if you'll hear it out, you will realize it's broad because it gives a lot of opportunity to lawyers as well as to ICs to interpret, even for the women, because it has to be seen from a fact to fact basis, right, on a case to case basis. So the first definition, that first parameter of sexual harassment is physical contact and advances. Therefore, which means, and that's basic to understand, any inappropriate touching, hugging, in serious cases assault or grabbing somebody, these are things that come within the definition of physical contact and advances. The second definition of sexual harassment is demand or request for sexual favors, okay, and which is what basically is quid pro quo, which means this for that. So the law says that, because there have been a lot of cases that come up where demand has been made or request has been made to a woman for sexual favor in return for something. So there are 2 elements attached to it. One is that there could be element of, if you will do what I'm asking you to do in terms of the sexual favor, then I will you will get promoted. Okay, so that's a positive reinforcement of the same, that I will only advance your career, or your career in the organization will only get advanced if you are listening to me in terms of the sexual favor that I'm demanding. The second is that if you don't adhere to, or you don't listen to what I'm or if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, in that case there will be a problem for you, like your position in the organization will be severely hampered. And both type of cases come in. So demand or request for such sexual favors happen in organizations, I mean, I will not generalize it, but typically this has been seen in senior junior relationships within organizations, where mostly people in managerial positions are demanding sexual favors from people who are junior in rank, from women who are junior in rank, either in the pretext of offering growth or in the pretext of threatening their position in the organization. So this has to be, this is something that comes up, and this is why a lot of organizations in recent times are also framing dating policies within organizations, because it's important that romantic relationship within organizations as well has to be made sure that organization takes a stand on it, because a lot of cases happen where 2 people are dating and there is a fallout, and that comes out on the organization, and then these cases become very messy to handle. And in a lot of organizations, dating policies define that how seniors in the organization cannot date people who they have a right, they can comment on their performance, or basically somebody who they are holding a managerial position over. So a lot of new things are happening vis-a-vis this as well. The third and the fourth thing that the law defines it as is making sexually colored remarks. So basically, making any joke, sexual innuendo, sexual anecdote, swearing, because as you know, a lot of Indian swears are sexual in nature. So swearing in front of your colleagues, all of that comes within the definition of, the making sexually colored remarks. The fourth category that the law says is basically showing pornography or any such text. So basically sharing pornographic text, etc., with the team, with any person in the organization, or sending them lewd messages on text. These things are also prohibited. The fifth way it defines it as any other physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct. So physical, obviously we have understood. Verbal, we have understood. Non-verbal basically refers to what, women face very frequently in public spaces, which is basically staring, leering, and stalking, right? So people are stalking happens, and that actually also extends. You'll be surprised to know how many cases of stalking comes up within workplaces, and cases of staring comes within workplaces, where a woman is feeling extremely uncomfortable because one person in the organization has decided to, stalk them, or like follow them around the workplace, or while they are going home. And it creates a very dangerous scenario for a woman, and or like consistently staring at them, making them feel very uncomfortable. And that's very important to understand. So these definitions of sexual harassment is very critical to understand for everyone. That and Two things I'm going to add to the definition of sexual harassment, and that comes one comes from the legal principles, that the law says that the intent of the basically your intent does not matter, the impact matters. So which means that a lot of cases come up where I have heard respondents who are basically the accused saying that I did not mean this, or I said it as a joke, or it slipped out of my mouth. So in that case, the law says that even if, you are saying your intent was not there, but you also have to measure it vis-a-vis the impact of the sexual harassment of on the woman. So it is very important to remember that. And second thing is very important to remember, that there is a line, and there is a line versus in terms of consent versus non-consent. And consent given is not absolute, right? So if you receive consent, one doesn't mean that's an absolute consent. It could be taken later on. So for example, like just to give you an example, people have friends in organizations, right? They're joking around, and there are a lot of jokes happen. And people, and sometimes there is an assumption that, okay, this person is listening, this woman is listening to my jokes, so she's going to listen to everything that I'm going to say. But no, that's not there, because there's always a line. So if you start making sexual anecdotes and sexual content in your jokes, and the other person is feeling uncomfortable, then you can't go and say that she used to laugh at my jokes earlier. So things like that one. And again, there is no strict definition here. These are broad parameters. Everything has to be seen on a case to case basis, which is where the job of the ICC and the external member comes in terms of handling such investigations.